Hello, everyone. This is Zineb Riboua from Beyond Ideological on Substack at zinebriboua.com. I have been especially paying attention to what happened in Venezuela, to what is happening right now in the Islamic Republic of Iran, and I have been, I think, more than a lot of observers, very bullish and optimistic about the protests. And I wrote a piece for the national interest where I explained, the crisis of the Islamic Republic and why I think is the beginning of the end. But I thought, why not? I'm writing another piece on Substack as well, probably published as a policy memo, but basically explaining Khamenei's strategic errors and why I think that this time he is in deep trouble. And it's not going to end well, and it's going to be very ugly. The I think that I think I'm making a very important distinction. I think that regimes like this can survive shocks. They can survive, for a very long time, sanctions, etc., because they build different channels and parallel channels and shadow channels to overcome them. But I think that this time he made really big, big mistakes, domestically, but also in terms of his foreign policy and foreign ambitions that have accumulated to the point where he cannot reverse those mistakes. And I think that it's kind of an important distinction. I don't think that I think the protests are more of the symptom of this, obviously. But it means that there's something deeper going on and something much more sinister. Um, and why not? I will just outlay an outline why I think that it's actually worse than what everyone thinks. The first problem and the first strategic mistake that Khamenei made is the problems regarding water management. Water management competence is absolutely crucial. It's a non-negotiable skill for any state aspiring either to be a real power or to just survive in the Middle East. It's absolutely crucial. Anyone who read about the Akkadian Empire just knows that you cannot sustain the empire for too long without agriculture, without managing water, etc. And the Islamic Republic just does not escape, and it's not exception to this historical logic. Um, Especially because when you have water management issues, it means that you've either neglected a very important sector, very important area of governance, or that it actually means also that um, because it actually depends on technical decisions, that the institutions surrounding that are not functioning well. And it means the data you're using is not credible data, and it's wrong, it's not transparent. And so it just reveals a real dysfunction in the Islamic Republic. I mean, the fact that I saw how Iran's officials are now accusing different countries of stealing the water. They've accused the UAE, they've accused Israel, they've accused Turkey. They especially accused Turkey, actually. They said that yeah, Turkey is diverting clouds or something of this sort. And instead of dealing with it, they went the conspiracy route. And people are not stupid. I don't think that Iranians are stupid. Even more so because the president of the Islamic Republic also, I found that he said that in Tehran, if we cannot manage and people do not cooperate in controlling consumption, there won't be any water. So he actually already prepares and signals that he's willing to go as far as blaming the population for wasting water. Instead of just seeing things for what they are, that there is a real chronic water stress across provinces in Isfahan, Sistan, Baluchistan, and other places. Um, And the fact that Khamenei failed to recognize this water crisis is actually an indicator that he is just not dealing with the real problems because water management is very important, as I explained. The second, the second problem, the second problem that I see with Khamenei is that he he is absolutely blind to what is happening around him. And I think that because uh, it's structural. So the revolutionary regime of the Islamic Republic is obviously based on this absolute fanatical desire to export their revolution, to have proxy networks, to nourish the proxies, to treat them as a permanent asset, even. Which is why Hezbollah is such a big deal for Iranian, for the Islamic Republic's calculus, when it comes to how to do strategic recalibrations, how to restore some sort of balance of power, etc. And the fact that Israel completely destroyed Hezbollah, and also with the fall of the Assad regime, means that the proxy network that was meant to defend the Islamic Republic is vanishing. And it also means that all the resources that Khamenei wasted in this in the proxy networks have also evaporated. And he just did not he just obviously he does not assume and he's not going to change his mind about the importance of proxy networks, and that's also a problem because it means that he's so rigid to the point where he will continue a regional posture even though the leverage he had completely eroded. And that's very important because it means that he keeps on wasting resources. It's very noticeable when it comes to Hezbollah. Hezbollah is still being treated as this great deterrent against Israel, even though Hezbollah is extremely weak right now. And so I think that Khamenei o- overestimates the power of proxies to the point where right now with the protests, I've seen some reports saying that some Iraqi militias are the ones coming to the rescue of the regime instead of others. And so he's pouring money into something that is just not helping the regime to survive. And that leads me to my third strategic error regarding Khamenei is that he also underestimates the learning curve and operational sophistication of Israel's military and underestimates how bad things are for him as this legitimate leader of the Islamic Republic revolution. Why? Because the losing a war obviously always has consequences. Uh, it means that the ideological narrative that there's this complete jihad against Israel, that the Islamic Republic will prevail, all of these things, with Operation Rising Lion, the Islamic Republic completely got destroyed. I mean, the level of penetration, the deceptive strategies that Israel adopted, just showed how far and how bad things are within Iran's own security. I mean, within the Islamic Republic's own security institutions, and how that there are also spies in there on that constantly spy on the Islamic Republic's leadership that are ready to give information. And I think that this means, I mean, the success of Israel just demonstrates how fragmented the Islamic Republic is. Because a lot of the operations they did, whether it's targeting like nuclear scientists, all of that, you can't do that without real human intelligence on the ground. You have to have these immense capabilities to do so. And I think Khamenei completely dismissed that. And it just means that he himself is a captive to this theology of jihad and that He does not need to look into his own people who are working with him for him, and that's very, I think, important. The other fourth strategic mistake that Khamenei is making, and this I think is an important one. More than others, I don't have, the Trump derangement syndrome, and I take very seriously whatever US administration is doing. But if there is one thing consistent in Khamenei's interaction, and this goes back actually to Obama, is that he always sees the fluctuations in US policy as a real evidence that the United States is exhausted, does not want to deal with the Islamic Republic. And so there was always going to be a reopening of channels, etc. Even though it will upset Saudi Arabia or Israel, very visible under Obama. And so Tehran always relies on the escalation. They always think will dramatically de-escalate. But under Trump, it's a different story. And I'm very surprised that he did not learn from Trump administration one, the first Trump administration, the maximum pressure campaign. I mean, there was no de-escalation. The pressure kept on accumulating because precisely the behavior did not change. And this misreading of Khamenei is really visible under Trump right now. And I think that it takes three forms. I explained that in my upcoming piece. The first one is that Trump is obviously a negotiator. He loves to negotiate, he loves to get deals, but it seems to me, I mean, I cannot, be in Khamenei's mind, but it seems that Khamenei interprets that as Trump's unwillingness and reluctance to impose high costs. And so I think that the regime always expect that, Trump will at some point reach out, at some point do something to just not upset the regime because they want a deal. But truth is, it did not happen. It did not happen with Operation Midnight Hammer, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Why? Because their hostile behavior just did not change. And so the second point is that it actually also means that Khamenei conflates, tactical volatility with strategic reversibility, meaning that he thinks that Trump being volatile and his erratic style is not a real thing. It means that whenever he says something, it's not real, it's not reliable. But if there's one thing I've learned from observing Trump and from reading a lot of things and following U.S. foreign policy is that when Trump really articulates a red line, it's a red line, and he really enforces it. And so Khamenei really mistakes that, and he does not take it seriously. And his assumption repeatedly fails. And that's, I think, a big problem. Why? Because right now, I saw some interviews, and also I think Trump posted it on X, how, not on X, on Truth Social, that Khamenei should not shoot at the protesters and should not kill the protesters. Um, and I think that Trump also gave a second chance hint yesterday at in an interview on Fox News, I think, of, yeah, I don't think they're shooting protesters, we'll see, things like that. But it's actually a warning, if you continue on this path, it's going to be very ugly. And Khamenei seems to dismiss that because this morning he basically said that, Trump is also going to fail, and and that he's a fallen ruler, things of this sort. And it's never good to mock Trump. I mean, the last guy who mocked Trump was Maduro. He was on TV dancing, chanting about John Lennon, mocking, saying, "Come get me," and these sort of things. Um, So obviously it escalated to a US military intervention. He got captured. Khamenei thinks that he just words, but words do have consequences, especially with someone like Trump. So I think that he is making a strategic error, and I think that he's doing that because he does not realize that he has no real external backing. Putin is not coming to his rescue, and he did not come, during Israel's Operation Rising Lion. He didn't even save Assad. I mean, Assad is right now in Moscow. Xi Jinping is also even less inclined to intervene because China usually prioritizes long-term economic access, corridors, all of these things, not regime rescue under pressure. I don't think this is something they do. And in fact, even if they give to the Islamic Republic frozen assets or these sort of things, it's just not going to be enough because of the some of the issues I highlighted in my piece on the crisis of the Islamic Republic, because they have an inflation issue, water management issue, problem with um, with sanctions, etc. It will never be enough. They're not even paying well the proxies, let alone the Basij and the IRGC. So I don't think the assets will be enough, and that China can do under the best case scenario, well, can do much for the Islamic Republic. So just to say that Khamenei does not understand how deterrence works, and I'm quite amazed by that. A lot of analysts are not saying these things because they have issues with Trump, etc. To me, these things do not matter to me. I really care more about policy and strategic thinking than any other thing. So yeah, I also wanted to say a few things about China because I think that, and this gets me to the fifth uh, strategic mistake that Khamenei is making, is that, and I saw actually a lot of pieces on Iranian newspapers and also from Iranian analysts saying that Khamenei overestimates his alignment with China, which I think is very true, because China only cares about a few things. First one is energy security. Beijing will always look for long-term access to discounted prices for growth, to hedge against any potential disruption of U.S. controlled maritime routes. That's very important. Sorry, I'll drink some water. The second thing that is very important for China is strategic positioning. The region is very important for China. I mean, the Middle East in general, because of the logistics corridor, because of digital infrastructure, because of the Belt and Road Initiative, and all of these things, because they contest US influence without a real direct confrontation. That's very important, I think. So Iran is very important for China for these reasons, but only as a means and not really as an end, because China does not want to get involved in domestic issues, because a lot of the problems that are facing the Islamic Republic right now are domestic, and it always avoids entanglements of this sort. So I think for these reasons that China was not a good bet for Khamenei. Um, it's there is a certain asymmetry in the China-Iran relationship that Khamenei just did not understand as that it's problematic. So I think that there's really a one-sided relationship where Iran absorbs risks while China extracts advantages because, for example, Iran is the one financing the Houthis, helping the Houthis more. Obviously, they do it in a cover way, etc. But it benefits China because it weakens the United States and US allies in the region are operating there. So I think that this is extremely important because the Islamic Republic right now is extremely dependent on China. And this is a problem because, during the late Cold War, regimes that were aligned with the Soviet Union, they thought that all the external backing they were getting from the Soviet Union meant having more strategic maneuvers, margins to have strategic maneuvers, and it meant having strategic independence. But actually, what happened at the time, obviously, is that the Soviet Union was sustaining them selectively. So whenever the costs were rising or the priorities were shifting, the Soviet Union would just not support anymore. Happened in Afghanistan, happened elsewhere. And so this means that Khamenei just does not understand that the survival of the Islamic Republic and the relationship it has with China is just conditional. It was never a real cooperation, like the cooperation that the United States has with other countries. The sixth strategic mistake, and this one is, I think, very visible. A lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people talked about it during the Mahsa Amini protests, but that Khamenei just does not understand the how deep the rupture between his generation and this generation inside Iran. I don't think he understands how the um the young Iranians are completely alien, and they completely hate and despise this regime. And this is a very important point because the um, because the regime's core claim to legitimacy is that it is a product of youth mobilization. In 1979, it was really the students, the young clerics that were the backbone of street organization, ideological dissemination. They were the ones in the street calling for the Iranian Islamic Republic revolution. And so this actually empowered really the regime in the 1980s, which is how they established revolutionary cohorts and units in neighborhoods, in schools, and really mobilized the country behind the Islamic Republic revolution. So the youth-driven revolutionary movement that defines the Islamic Republic is now a thing of the past, and he did not make any effort to sustain this generational I would say I mean he did not sustain. I don't know how to say it. He just did not nourish this generation enough. I mean, obviously, he's given more money to the proxies than to the people. I mean, the youth in employment is absolutely horrifying. So it actually leads me to my other point that if you have this huge gap, it means that indoctrination just is just not working. It means that what these clerics, what these mullahs are promoting completely contradicts the revolutionary promises because the Islamic Republic really puts the emphasis on economic inclusion, all of these things, and justice and equality, but obviously it's just not being translated. And it's even more problematic when you are surrounded by neighbors that are getting more and more successful. I mean, the UAE, Azerbaijan, Saudi Arabia. I mean, they are much more invested in their youth. They're investing They're investing in tourism. They're investing in different sectors, and people in Iran see that. I mean, Iran is a very rich country. It's not impossible to do, but the rigidity of the system is preventing them from doing any of this. So this is also, as a leader of a revolutionary movement, I think that this is a really deep strategic failure, um, and I don't think that this in particular is reversible. My last point is really overestimating the coercive state. I think that Khamenei still continues to operate on the assumption that coercion, supplemented by illicit finance and sanctions evasion, can actually substitute for governance. That's a mistake. If you read any of Machiavelli, you just can't rely on violence. You can do it, times here and there. Historically, there's some case studies that just show, repression can work, but you can't rely on it. You cannot rely on it, especially when you're a revolutionary regime calling for, basically preaching that you're the best regime. And I think that um, this time not only repression is just not working, but that Khamenei does not have much to finance the repression because because the sanctions are being enforced this time. I mean, in I think in late 2025, yeah, that's when I think the United States targeted dozens of entities and vessels, and they went after all the illicit channels that the Islamic Republic is using, completely squeezed them. And despite that, the Khamenei just expanded military spending. To like more than 12 billion. And it's ridiculous when you understand how much of a fiscal strain, how much of how bad their own budget is. So what I mean by that is that Khamenei is betting on repression and force, but it's very visible now that he's unable to govern. And so this is why I think that obviously the protests are only going to spread. I think now there are 27 provinces, despite all of the arrests and violence and so on. So anyway, I these are the seven strategic mistakes that I think Khamenei is making, and I believe that this time in deep trouble. He cannot really adapt. I don't think he can adapt, go back. He cannot fix any of this. I think he is in a very survival mode. I think that he underestimates what the Trump administration can do. Oh, sorry, underestimates what the Trump administration can do. I think he overestimates his capacity to coerce people. He um, made all of these miscalculations that will definitely um, um, cost him a lot. So this is why I have been very vocal about why I think this is really the beginning of the end. And there is no going back from these protests. I genuinely do not think so. I would be surprised. And I'll publicly announce that, I got it wrong. But he just does not understand the situation. um, and there are several reasons to that. People are probably lying to him, telling him things that are not true. And obviously he's a religious um, extremist, absolutely fanatic, genuinely believes that everything is a Zionist plot and not the outcome of his own decisions. So, yeah, this is basically my thinking. I hope I summarized it well. My piece will be, I think, published either today or tomorrow, but I hope to get it out because of things are evolving too fast, and I hope to dedicate much more time to just analyze all of this So yeah, this is basically why I think that these are Khamenei's last days, and I hope to see you soon for another video.